And then Isaac sent Jacob on his way. So what is this blessing? He says, find yourself a good wife, have lots of kids, and come home sometime. That's what the blessing is that Dad lays on him. So Jacob takes off, and he is traveling light. There is no Motel 6. When he gets bedtime, there is no tent. There is not even an air mattress. There's a big rock. And when he lays down, he begins to dream a dream. And on this dream, there is a ladder that reaches up to heaven. Let's begin in verse 12. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your grandfather Abraham and your father Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and the east, the north and the south. All peoples of the earth will be blessed through you and your family. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I've done everything that I promised. So let's look at what God's blessing entails. First of all, God says, I'm going to give you a home. Now this must be a pretty big promise to Jacob, who's just been thrown out of his and has no idea what he's going to do for a home. Secondly, God promises him a huge family tree, lots of descendants. Well, Jacob's not even married, so at least there is somebody in his future. Thirdly, God promises immortality of his family line because somehow they're going to bless all nations. And fourthly, God promises his continuing presence. Now notice what this is not. This is not a promise of wealth or position or power. This is a promise of a continuing relationship between God and Jacob and all his future family. This is going to provide their needs, this relationship, and it's going to bless others. Now look at verse 20. Jacob's response shows that he understands that there is a relationship for me. He says, if God will be with me, watch over me, give me food and clothes, and bring me home again, I will make the Lord my God. In fact, I'll set up a place of worship right now, right here. And I'm going to pay tithe of everything that God gives me. So this is Jacob's response. But do you notice he missed part of the blessing? He doesn't respond to the part of the blessing about being a blessing to others. Now we know, kind of standing downstream, that this directly referred to the coming of the Messiah through Jacob's descendants. But I think it also applied to the results of Israel showing God to the world. They were supposed to show the world what a blessing it would be to live in relationship with God. For whatever reason, Jacob didn't get that. All right, now let's go back over to Isaiah 58. We are now hundreds of years downstream from Jacob. God has continued his end of the deal with Israel. In fact, Jacob's descendants now number in the millions. David does a count of all his warriors in 2 Samuel, and he has 1.3 million warriors. So, of course, then those warriors all have families, so you know that Jacob's descendants are by now stretching to the east and to the west, to the north and the south, just like God promised. They have a homeland, they're back. They've been to Egypt, and now they're back, and they're settled, and they've taken over Canaan, and they're firmly entrenched. And they have a society where if they had followed God's plan, everyone would be taken care of. God had set up a society where, for instance, if you lost your land through bad management, at the end of 50 years, your family got it back. Everybody's needs would be taken care of. if they followed the plan. And God has blessed, to that point, has blessed the nations around them. Joseph saved the then-known world from famine by managing the resources of Egypt. Solomon's wisdom has gone throughout the world. People as far away as Ethiopia have come to seek his wisdom. So they have begun to bless the world. And then because of their relationships, other people have found Jesus. Think of have found God. Rahab, the prostitute at Jericho. She becomes a progenitor of Jesus because she found God through Israel's example of relationship. And then all along the way, God is revealing little bits and pieces of his ultimate plan of blessing, Jesus Christ. But by the time we get to Isaiah 58, Jacob's family, while they're still worshiping, something not quite right. They seek God. They seem eager to know what God has to say. They ask God for just decisions, and they want God to come near. In fact, they're fasting and asking for forgiveness of their sins. But they know that there's something missing, and God is addressing that. So let's look at verse 3. God says, here's what you tell me. We have fasted before you. Why aren't you impressed? We have humbled ourselves, but you're not even noticing. And this is what God responds. God responds, on the day of your fast, you're looking for your own desires. And at the same time, you are oppressing and exploiting your workers. Even while you're fasting, you're quarreling, and it turns violent. You can't fast this way and expect to get anywhere with me. That's what God says. Don't expect this to count for me. Do you think it's worship to ask for forgiveness one day a week? Do you think that you can bow your heads like a blade of grass in the wind and act like you're repenting? Do you really think this is worship? God says, no, here's what I want. Here's what I want you to do. He says, I want you to loose the chains of injustice. Treat those who work for you fairly. Share your food with the hungry. Give shelter to the homeless. Clothe the naked. And he says, charity starts at home. Start with your relatives. Now, if you'll remember, it was God who said to Jacob, all nations of the earth will be blessed by your family. God didn't command Jacob to go out and bless people. He said to be blessed by your family. What he asked them to do was to live wholly dedicated to him, and then as an outgrowth of that relationship, everyone around them would be blessed.